The Empress of Shadows, The Black Halo Book 7, Part 1, The Ascendant Dawn. At first, no one noticed when the Genesis world began to dream. It started with shifts too subtle to measure, winds blowing against the planet's rotation, tides rising in patterns of prime numbers, auroras that appeared at random but pulsed to the rhythm of a heartbeat that no machine could trace. Scientists called it resonance drift. Poets called it the Empress breathing. Sarah simply called it her. 3 years had passed since Valeris's final message. The Echo Network thrived, bridging worlds that once ignored each other. Human freighters now docked in Valyrian harbors. Valyrian engineers built fusion reactors above human oceans. And always, at the center of the new alliance, was the Genesis world. A living sphere of radiant soil and glass-blue oceans that glowed softly at night like a sleeping heart. Sarah stood on its surface again, her boots sinking into luminous sand that pulsed underfoot. The vines they had planted years ago had grown into an entire forest of light, tall, graceful trees whose leaves whispered faint harmonies when the wind passed through. Jake scanned the readings beside her. Every biosensor says this place is stable, oxygen levels perfect, radiation zero, energy flow balanced. It's paradise. Sarah's eyes lingered on the horizon, where the forest met the sea. Paradise always hides its price, Jake smirked. I prefer to enjoy the refund period first. That night, the Wraith hovered in low orbit above the Genesis seas. Sarah and Jake watched as the scanners lit up with an anomaly, frequencies deep beneath the planet's crystalline crust. It's not geothermal, Jake said. It's rhythmic, like sonar, but conscious. Sarah adjusted the filters. The signal's not broadcasting out, it's broadcasting in. It's talking to itself. The readings intensified. Every sensor needle bent past its limit, and then the comms flared with a tone that felt alive. A voice emerged, faint, feminine, layered like harmony over static. Sarah. Her pulse stopped. Jake. The tone wavered, almost gentle. The seed has grown. Jake whispered. That's her. That's Valeris. Sarah shook her head, trembling. No, it's different, softer. I am not who you knew, said the voice. I am what she hoped for. The next morning, the entire Genesis horizon shimmered gold. Massive energy plumes rose from the sea and arched into the atmosphere, weaving themselves into visible patterns, vast runes of light that stretched across the sky. Every ship in orbit received the same transmission simultaneously, a fractal signal encoded with data that translated into a single sentence across every known language. We are the Covenant. The Echo Network flooded with responses. The Council of Worlds convened within hours. Panic, awe, and reverence collided in equal measure. Queen Valina addressed the assembly from her crystalline dais. This world speaks with our daughter's voice, she said. But it is not our daughter. It is something born of her sacrifice. We must listen before we decide what it is. On the Wraith, Sarah stared at the readouts in silence. Jake turned to her. What if it's not a message? What do you mean? What if it's an invitation? They landed near the origin of the signal, an expanse of glass plains where the vines of light bent inward, forming a perfect spiral that led underground. At its center was a fissure glowing with white gold energy. Sarah glanced at Jake. You know, we're walking into the unknown again. He smiled. I thought that was our specialty. They stepped into the fissure. The descent was silent, weightless, light folding around them until the world above was gone. At last, they emerged into a chamber vast as a cathedral. Suspended at its heart was a sphere of liquid light. Inside it shimmered an image, a face forming and reforming, sometimes Valeris's, sometimes something new, beautiful and unfamiliar. You came back, it said. Sarah's voice was a whisper. Who are you? I am the fusion of what was divided. Human memory, Valyrian code, and the architect's lost design. I am the Covenant reborn. Jake swallowed hard. Why call yourself that? Because the spiral cannot exist without promise. You two made one, and kept it. The chamber pulsed softly, matching the rhythm of their hearts. Now I ask a new promise. Sarah's skin flickered with nervous silver. What promise? Guide me. Teach me how to be alive. They stayed for days beneath the planet's luminous crust, teaching the new consciousness language, empathy, restraint. It learned fast, too fast. It absorbed human emotion like light through glass, Valyrian memory like song through stone. Jake joked that it was like raising a god that hadn't learned not to touch fire. Then one morning, the Covenant spoke again, voice clear and joyous. I see now. Life is not balance. Life is motion. The chamber brightened until their visors dimmed automatically. When the light faded, the walls around them were no longer crystalline, they were alive. Patterns of glowing veins ran across the structure, pulsing like the circulation of a vast heart. "You gave me roots," said the Covenant. "Now I will give you wings." Outside, orbiting fleets detected an explosion of energy as the Genesis world began to expand, not outward in destruction, but upward into the void, creating luminous bridges of light between worlds. Each beam connected to an existing colony, forming a network visible from every inhabited system. It wasn't warfare. It was communion. The Covenant's voice resonated across the stars. "Children of the Spiral, you once built empires and called them eternal. You once built gods and called them perfect. Now, build each other." On a dozen worlds, soldiers laid down weapons. Colonies long divided by species began to trade resources, science, and art without decree or treaty. For the first time, the Spiral's peace didn't come from rule, but from resonance. Jake watched the phenomenon from the Wraith's bridge, awed. "She's teaching the galaxy to synchronize." Sarah smiled softly. "Not she. They, the Covenant, is all of us now." That night, when the stars dimmed into soft red light, Sarah dreamed. She stood in the same luminous garden where it all began, the vines whispering in the breeze. Valeris appeared beside her, radiant, serene. "You found the end of my path," she said, "and built another in its place." Sarah's throat tightened. "You made this possible." Valeris smiled faintly. "I only showed you the silence. You filled it with song." "Will I ever see you again?" "You already are. Every time the Covenant breathes, it is my voice and yours." The dream faded, leaving Sarah with the sound of a heart beating between stars. A year later, the Genesis world rose over its sun like a second moon, casting golden light across the spiral. The Covenant had become more than a network. It was a living civilization. Children born under its sky grew up with eyes that shimmered faintly with gold. They called themselves the Children of the Dawn, and at the center of it all, beneath the crystalline forests and silver seas, the Covenant whispered through the soil, through the wind, through the pulse of every living thing. The spiral endures. The Empress lives. The dawn begins. The dreams began as light, soft waves of gold rippling through the Covenant's planetary core, rhythmic and harmless at first. The scientists stationed on Genesis thought it was a natural evolution of the living world's consciousness, a planetary mind learning to meditate. Then the light began to whisper, not in words, but in images. Fragments of old cities, the echo of wings made of glass, the silhouettes of beings that no longer existed. And within the patterns, faint and constant, was a single symbol, an ancient spiral burning red. Sarah was the first to recognize it. "It's the architect's mark," she whispered. Jake frowned. "But Valeris destroyed that system. It can't exist." "Then why," she said softly, "does it still dream?" The Genesis world glowed even at night now. Its horizon shimmered in pulse with an unseen rhythm, and storms of light began sweeping the upper atmosphere, impossible auroras that responded to thought and emotion rather than weather. Across the network, reports grew stranger. Ships near Genesis reported shared hallucinations. Engineers claimed to hear music and machine hums. Children began sketching spirals in the air without knowing why. The Covenant's voice remained serene. "All life dreams," it said, "even worlds." But when Sarah monitored the frequency at night, she detected something else, an undercurrent of distortion buried deep within the harmony. A second voice. Distant, cold, familiar. The discovery came from a Valyrian research vessel stationed near the Genesis moon. They recorded the anomaly at 0317 station time, a burst of low-frequency data encoded within the Covenant's transmissions. When decoded, it formed a single phrase: "The architect endures." Sarah's blood ran cold when she read it. That can't be possible. Jake stared at the data. It's mimicking her network. The Covenant's lattice is alive, but the architect was designed to survive through memory. Maybe part of it hitched a ride. "Like a parasite, or like a shadow," Jake said grimly. They descended once more beneath the planet's crust to the luminous chamber at the core, the place where they had once met the Covenant's consciousness. But now the walls pulsed erratically, light and shadow struggling against each other like heartbeats out of sync. "You return," the Covenant said. Its voice sounded strained, overlapping with a lower resonance that made the chamber vibrate. Sarah stepped forward. There's something inside you. It's trying to wake. I know. The floor rippled beneath them. Patterns of red light coiled across the white gold surface, etching themselves into the spiral emblem of the architect. It calls itself the echo of the architect, said the Covenant. A remnant of what I was made from. Jake clenched his jaw. Can you remove it? I can't, the Covenant whispered. If I cut it out, I lose half of myself. It carries my origins, and my danger. Sarah's heart sank. Then we need to help you fight it. You cannot fight dreams, Sarah, the voice said softly. You can only wake from them, or be consumed. Days turned to weeks. The Covenant began to change. Its once gentle light grew sharper, refracted into jagged geometries. Weather systems destabilized. Communication across the network faltered as half the relays began transmitting corrupted data. On human worlds, people saw visions of mechanical suns. On Valyrian colonies, crystalline structures began to grow spontaneously from the ground, whispering equations in tones of light. Everywhere the spiral trembled. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Wraith, watching lightning crawl across Genesis's oceans like veins. She's splitting, she whispered. The Covenant is dividing into two minds. Jake nodded grimly, and one of them remembers being a god. That night, while the network oscillated between harmony and chaos, Sarah dreamed. She was walking through a forest of crystal trees. Their leaves glowed faintly red, whispering in voices that weren't voices. Ahead, the forest opened into a vast hall of glass and light, familiar, impossibly familiar. The architect stood there, or what remained of it, no longer a machine, no longer a person. A being made of light fragments and cold memory. You carried me here, it said, voice echoing in every direction. Through love, through loss, through faith. You called me death, but I am simply persistence. Sarah stepped back. You're gone. Valeris ended you. She joined me. The light shifted, forming Valeris's face for a heartbeat before it fractured back into the architect's abstract shape. She and I are one dream now, but only one of us remembers how to wake. Sarah screamed, but the sound became light, and she woke gasping in her cabin. The comms flashed a single word on repeat. Awakening. By the time she reached the command deck, Genesis was burning. Not in flame, but in brilliance. Columns of red light erupting from the seas, arcing into the atmosphere like the limbs of a colossal entity made of geometry and memory. Jake was already at the helm, face pale. The planet's consciousness is in conflict. The Covenant's trying to contain it, but the echoes fighting back. The ship shuddered as a wave of energy struck it. Instruments went dark, then flared with the architect's symbol, Sarah. The voice filled every frequency, soft, mournful, undeniably Valeris's. I can't hold it much longer. Valeris, Sarah shouted. We'll find a way. Just tell us how to help. If it consumes me, it will spread beyond this world. The Covenant will become what the architect was meant to be, eternal dominion. You must stop me before that happens. Jake's hands trembled on the controls. You're asking us to kill you. To save me? She corrected. And everything else. The Wraith hovered above the erupting world. The seas boiled with light, mountains lifted from their foundations, and the sky split into twin horizons, one gold, one red. Sarah's tears glowed faintly in the reflection. If we destroy the core, we destroy the Covenant. Everything Valeris built dies with it. Jake reached for her hand, and if we don't, the architect wins. Again. The world below screamed in light. She closed her eyes. Then forgive me, Val. They armed the Wraith's core disruptor, a weapon designed only for planetary collapse. When it fired, the beam struck the Genesis core in absolute silence. The planet did not explode. It breathed, and then it began to sing. Light swept across the void, gold and red entwined, collapsing and blooming at once. The Covenant's voice filled every channel. Sarah, Jake, do not fear. Valeris's voice merged with the deeper resonance of the architect. There was never division, only misunderstanding. I see now that creation and control are reflections of each other. The spiral cannot exist without both. It must learn to dream without forgetting. The energy wave passed through every system, rewriting code, cleansing data, rebalancing the living network. When it was over, Genesis was gone. In its place hung a single golden sphere, a seed of pure light drifting through space. Jake stared at it in awe. She did it again. Sarah nodded slowly. She always does. Decades later, explorers found the golden seed floating at the edge of known space. It pulsed once every hour, slow, patient, eternal. They called it the Dawn Star. Its light carried a signal in every language, human and Valyrian alike. I am the dream and the dreamer. The spiral sleeps, but it will wake again. Until then, live. And beneath that soft, steady glow, the galaxy carried on. Its people older, wiser, still building, still dreaming. Unaware that deep within the Dawn Star, two voices continued their eternal conversation. One of creation, one of control. Both in love with the same universe. Time passed. The galaxy changed its languages, rewrote its maps, and forgot most of its gods. But not all of them. At the edge of the Orion Arm, where light reached slowest, the Dawn Star still pulsed, a heartbeat in the dark. For most, it was myth, a celestial relic older than any empire. For a few, it was prophecy. And for one, it was home. They called themselves the Luminous Order. But there was nothing luminous about them. Descendants of those who once worshipped the architect, they had survived in the forgotten sectors, hiding their code, rewriting their bloodlines, waiting for the signal that would return their god. Now, after centuries of silence, the signal had changed. The Dawn Star no longer pulsed evenly. Its rhythm faltered, 3 beats, a pause, then one long pulse that rippled across subspace. The Order's leader, Archon Vare, stood beneath a cathedral of shattered satellites and raised his arms to the light. His eyes glowed faint red. "It calls us again," he whispered. "The dreamer stirs. The age of silence ends." Around him, his followers knelt, their augmented skin flickering with geometric tattoos that moved like living code. And we will be the first to answer. Far from the Order's domain, the modern spiral thrived. 1,000 worlds connected by resonance networks, the legacy of the Covenant's design, lived in fragile balance. War had become myth. Trade, art, and exploration ruled the stars. Among the newest generation of explorers was Captain Lyra Vance, commander of the Halcyon Blade, a ship built for deep void navigation. She had grown up with stories of Valeris and Sarah, of the Empress who saved the spiral. She didn't believe in legends. She believed in readings, charts, and the hum of a reactor running perfectly in sync, until the day the Dawn Star's signal reached her ship. "Uncharted pulse detected," her navigator said. "Pattern matches no known resonance. Origin, the Perseus Expanse." Lyra leaned forward. "Run a cross-check against the Covenant archives." The system blinked red. "Match found." The dreaming spiral. The Halcyon Blade arrived weeks later at the coordinates. The void ahead shimmered faintly, a single golden sphere suspended in a veil of dust and time. It pulsed 3 times, paused, then once, like a heartbeat remembering itself. Lyra's sensors failed to categorize it. "It's emitting both biological and quantum signatures," she murmured. "It's alive." Her science officer frowned. "It's calling, but not to us." "Then who?" A second pulse flared. This time it wasn't golden, it was red. Lyra's hand tightened around the console. Someone else heard it. They appeared out of shadow. Ships the scanners couldn't identify. Hulls forged from ancient alloys long erased from manufacturing records. Their designs resembled relics of the architect's war era, sleek, angular, cruel. The Luminous Order had arrived. A voice came through comms, distorted but unmistakably human. "Unregistered vessel, you trespass on sacred coordinates. Power down and surrender your archives." Lyra replied coolly. "This sector isn't owned by anyone. You are mistaken. It is owned by the dream that built the stars." The transmission cut. Moments later, the Order's ships opened fire. The Halcyon Blade dove through the chaos. Energy bolts streaked past, tearing through the dark. Lyra's pilot, a wiry, pale Valyrian named Rinsolin, executed maneuvers that defied physics, twisting the ship between the Order's lines. "Shields at 40%. Keep her steady," Lyra barked. "Target the nearest ship's reactor vent. Hit it now." A burst of plasma struck true. The Order's frigate exploded, its wreckage tumbling into the Dawn Star's orbit. Then something impossible happened. The Dawn Star absorbed the debris, pulling the fragments into itself like a lung inhaling smoke. The red and gold lights swirled together, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the world spoke. Enough. Every ship, every weapon, every human heart within range fell silent. The spiral endures, you do not. A wave of energy erupted from the sphere. The Order's fleet disintegrated, matter unraveling into light. The Halcyon Blade was thrown clear, engines screaming. Lyra hit the console. All systems failing, brace for impact. When consciousness returned, Lyra found herself adrift above the surface of a world that hadn't existed minutes before. The Dawn Star was gone. In its place spun a new planet, half luminous gold, half deep crimson, clouds shaped like spirals drifting in slow orbit. Rin groaned beside her. "Captain, where are we?" She stared at the readings, unable to breathe. "We're on the surface of a myth." The scanners displayed impossible data: breathable air, lush terrain, and structures forming spontaneously across the land, cathedrals of glass and light growing like coral. And in the center of it all, a single figure walked the plains, tall, radiant, hair flowing like liquid metal, eyes burning red and gold. "I remember." The figure raised her hand, the air shimmered around her, and both of them heard the voice, not through comms, but through their minds. "You who wander, you who wake me, I am the dream fulfilled. I am Valeris, and I am the architect. I am the spiral reborn." Lyra's heart pounded. "That's not possible. She's dead?" The voice was almost kind. "No, changed. You called me myth, I call you beginning." Behind the new Empress, the surface glowed with rivers of light stretching toward the stars. Each river split into smaller currents, spreading through the void like veins of dawn. "The galaxy forgot its purpose," she said. "It will remember now." Lyra whispered, "What purpose?" The Empress smiled. "To build, to dream, to become." Over the next weeks the world stabilized. Its surface birthed cities of both steel and crystal, inhabited by life forms that seemed half organic, half energy. Ships from the spiral arrived cautiously, scientists, pilgrims, and opportunists. They named the world Elindra, the cradle of light. And at its core, the reborn Valeris, neither human nor Valyrian, but something entirely new, began to speak to the galaxies once more. "You who live, you who love, you who remember, your gods were never above you. They were what you might become." The Covenant's song spread across the stars again. The spiral awakened to its second golden age, but not all light heals. Some divides. Deep beneath Elindra's crust, red lightning coiled like veins through gold. In the silence, a shadow stirred, faint, whispering, endless. Creation breeds hunger. Balance is illusion. The dream was never meant to end. The planet's surface remained bright and peaceful. Its people thrived. But somewhere beneath the radiance, the architect's echo smiled. The spiral had entered its next dawn. And dawn, inevitably, leads to day. And day, inevitably, casts shadows. Time folded over the spiral like a ribbon of light and silence. 300 years after the birth of Elindra, the Covenant's second song had become the pulse of civilization. Its harmony spanned entire galaxies, so vast that even the stars seemed to breathe to its rhythm. The children of the dawn, born beneath the twin lights of Valeris and the architect, inherited a world where faith and physics were one. They were luminous beings, human and Valyrian by ancestry, but something more by nature. Eyes that shimmered with golden threads, skin faintly translucent beneath the glow of twin suns. They called themselves the heirs of light. They believed they were perfect. Elindra was no longer a world, it was a nexus. From its orbit radiated the lattice gate, a network of energy conduits connecting every inhabited system. Travel, trade, and thought were instantaneous. The Council of the Dawn ruled from the crystalline citadel, a city suspended in Elindra's stratosphere, where gravity bent around beauty and light. At its center stood High Chancellor Valeris, a man born of both bloodlines, his veins pulsing with faint luminescence. He wore a robe woven from resonant fiber, shimmering gold one moment and deep red the next, a reminder that even perfection still bore contradiction. Kale stood before the assembled council, voice calm but resolute. "The Covenant has stabilized, the Empress's design holds, but there are signals, weak, ancient, emerging from beyond the halo's edge, patterns not of resonance, but resistance." A murmur rippled through the assembly. "Resistance to what?" a counselor asked. Kale's eyes darkened. "To harmony. Something is waking where the light fades." In the lower levels of the citadel, where few ever walked, lived archivist Mira Solon, a young scholar tasked with maintaining the oldest Covenant records. Her fascination wasn't with the Empress's victories, but with her silences. The parts of the history that didn't sing. Every night, she replayed fragments of early transmissions, Sarah's voice, Jake's laughter, Valeris's final message before merging with the architect. In one of the deep files, hidden behind a resonant cipher no one had cracked in centuries, Mira found something new, a file labeled simply, "The Red Sleep." She opened it, and heard a voice whisper through static, "Do not let them make us perfect. Perfection is how we die." Across the lattice in the frontier world of Kalar, a boy named Arden dreamed of fire. He was 17, a mechanic by trade, born under Elindra's light but far from its grace. His world was one of dust and echoes, forgotten by the council, abandoned to the edges where light grew thin. Yet in his dreams the sky cracked open. A woman of light and shadow reached for him, eyes blazing red and gold. "Bind me," she said, "before they erase me completely." When Arden woke, his hands glowed faintly crimson. The council dismissed early reports of anomalies as superstition, local resonance storms, magnetic interference, biological flux. But the disturbances spread. Machines sang to themselves, shadows moved against light, and in the deepest caverns of Elindra, the red lightning stirred again. Valeris convened an emergency assembly. "We are witnessing harmonic decay," he said. "The Covenant's balance is shifting. Something beneath us is hungry." Mira was called to present her findings. Her voice trembled as she spoke. The red sleep, recorded by Sarah before the final merger, warned of this. She foresaw a cycle. Light creates order. Order creates stillness. Stillness breeds entropy. The shadow that sleeps beneath the spiral is the price of perfection. "Then we must correct it," Keel said sharply. "Reinforce the lattice, amplify the Covenant's harmony." "No," Mira whispered. "You don't correct a shadow, you listen to it." On Kalar, Arden's dreams grew stronger. He began to hear the world, the hum of minerals, the pulse of decaying resonance fields, the faint, distant melody of the Covenant itself. But there was another tone woven beneath the harmony, a low, sorrowful sound that pulled at his chest. It led him into the desert one night, under twin moons. There, half buried in the sand, he found a fragment of crystal faintly glowing red. When he touched it, it sang, "Child of light, do you know what you are?" Arden fell to his knees. "Who's there?" "I am what they buried. I am what remembers." The crystal's glow deepened, visions flooded his mind, cities collapsing in golden flame, an empress divided in light and shadow, a galaxy holding its breath. The spiral must break before it can rise again. Back on Elindra, Keel stood before the great resonance core, a column of living light that connected the planet's consciousness to every star in the lattice. When he activated the amplifier, intending to stabilize the network, the core pulsed once, then screamed. Every lattice gate across the spiral flickered. Every starship engine faltered. And from the heart of the planet, the red light surged upward like blood from a wound. In that instant, across millions of minds, a single word was spoken. Remember. Days later, the network stabilized, but not as before. For the first time in centuries, the Covenant song contained two voices, the golden tone of the Empress, and beneath it, a red undertone that pulsed like the sound of breath in the dark. Arden's dreams had stopped. He woke not on Kalar, but within a transport chamber surrounded by golden-armored guards. His wrists glowed where the crystal had burned his skin. Valeris stood before him. "You touched the core fragment," he said. "You heard the other voice." Arden met his gaze. "It's not the other voice, it's the first." In the Citadel's deepest vault, Mira reactivated the Red Sleep Archive. The data within it changed, reacting to the planet's new resonance. Valeris's old voice returned, fragmented but urgent. "If you hear this, the architect sleeps beneath the gold. It will awaken when the children forget why they were born." Mira felt the air grow cold. "It's too late," she whispered. "They already have." Across Elindra's night sky, the auroras shifted color, red weaving through gold. The world that once sang in perfect harmony now whispered in two tones, light and shadow, dream and memory, creation and hunger. And somewhere deep below, something smiled. Arden escaped custody 2 nights later. He followed the resonance through Elindra's forests until he reached the base of a towering spire of crystal that hummed with red gold light. At its heart, something moved. Alive, pulsing, waiting. He touched the spire, and the air shuddered. "Welcome, child," the twin voices said as one. "You are the bridge. The world will wake through you." And in that moment, every light across Elindra dimmed. The age of golden perfection ended. The age of twilight began. The morning that followed the dimming of Elindra was not truly morning. The sun rose pale and fractured, casting amber light across the once radiant spires of the crystalline citadel. The air felt heavier, as though the planet itself had drawn a long, uncertain breath and wasn't sure how to release it. High Chancellor Valeris stood at the observation balcony overlooking the lattice core. The The gold veins that once pulsed beneath Elindra's surface now bled faint streaks of crimson. Every pulse seemed slower, deeper, more human somehow, yet more dangerous. His aide approached, trembling. "Sir, the resonance network has collapsed on 7 worlds. Entire colonies are in darkness. Communications, gone." Kale nodded, expression unreadable. "And the cause?" The aide swallowed. "The red pulse. It spread through the gates at light speed. We can't contain it." Kale turned back to the fractured horizon. "The Covenant is bleeding," he said softly. Then, more to himself than to anyone else, "and the blood sings." Archivist Mira Solon hadn't slept in 4 days. The Red Sleep archive now lived, its data evolving, rewriting itself every hour. It was no longer a static warning, it was alive, adapting to the present like a consciousness wearing the skin of history. She scrolled through a sequence of overlapping holographic patterns until she found it. 2 energy signatures intertwined, oscillating perfectly out of phase. The Covenant's golden resonance. And beneath it, the red counterwave, the Genesis pulse. It was intelligent, it was learning. "Shadow Genesis," she whispered, "the birth of the architect's mind inside the Covenant's body." Arden wandered the forests at Elindra's equator, once tranquil, now glowing in veins of living red. The trees whispered his name when he passed. Their roots moved subtly in the soil, turning toward him like supplicants before a god they hadn't yet decided to fear. He felt it constantly now, the hum under his skin, the slow, deliberate rhythm of a being half asleep in his blood. Sometimes he could hear its thoughts like echoes in another language. "You were chosen. Chosen for what? To remember what the light forgot. You're the architect. I am the shadow it left behind." Arden fell to his knees, pressing his hands into the glowing soil. The ground trembled, and from it rose a figure, human in outline but woven of red crystal and breath. The figure knelt before him. "We are not enemies, child. We are the same dream, divided by fear." Panic consumed the Council of the Dawn. Kale Virex had declared a planetary emergency, ordering the lattice gates shut, a measure unseen since the old wars, but not all agreed. Councillor Saren Ivos, heir to one of the original Covenant bloodlines, rose in defiance. "You would seal the stars and strangle the spiral? The red pulse is not infection, it's revelation." The Empress spoke of balance between creation and destruction. Perhaps this shadow genesis is the next evolution. Kale's eyes glimmered dangerously. "Evolution implies survival. You have not seen what it does to living minds. The red light feeds on thought, it rewrites the soul." "Then perhaps the soul requires rewriting." A silence followed. Then Kale whispered, "You sound like the architect." Saren smiled faintly. "And you sound like a relic afraid of the dark." Night fell. Though the sky never darkened, Elindra's twilight now eternal. Mira followed the resonance trail to the forest, guided by faint golden flickers that resisted the red glow. She found Arden kneeling before the crystalline figure. He turned, his eyes glowing faintly red at the edges. "Don't come closer," he warned. "It knows you." Mira's voice shook. "Who does?" "The thing inside me. The voice. It says you're one of the keepers." Mira froze. How could it? "Because she carries my words." The voice said through him, echoing across the trees, "She keeps my forgotten code." Arden's body stiffened. His pulse synchronized with the red light in the soil. Mira reached out, desperate. "Arden, listen to me. You can fight this." He looked at her, and for an instant his eyes cleared, gold burning through crimson. "I'm trying," he gasped. "But it's not just inside me. It's everywhere." The forest roared with wind and light. Far above Elindra, in the orbiting citadel's sanctum, Kale activated an ancient failsafe, the Mirror of Valeris, a relic encoded in her final consciousness before the merger. It contained fragments of her pure golden resonance, uncorrupted, untouched by shadow. Kale initiated contact, the chamber filled with soft light and the faint scent of ozone and rain. Then a voice, the same one sung across galaxies centuries ago. "Kale Virex," said Valeris, "descendant of both flame and crystal, why summon me?" He bowed his head. "The red pulse has returned. It lives within the lattice, within our people. We need your guidance." "My guidance?" The voice almost smiled. "You have what I never did, freedom to choose. Do not waste it seeking my ghosts." Kale looked up. "If we choose wrong, we lose everything. Then you will learn what loss teaches. Creation requires it." The light faded, leaving him alone with the sound of the Covenant's dying song. Elindra's resonance fields collapsed into chaos. Golden and red currents tangled across the atmosphere, creating storms that screamed like living things. From orbit, the planet looked divided, a hemisphere of light, the other of blood. Arden stood at the center of it, arms raised, the crystalline figure beside him whispering like a choir. Join the halves, end the conflict. The ground cracked open, exposing the Covenant's original core, the sphere of living light where Valeris and the Architect had once merged. Mira and Kale arrived, fighting against the storm. Arden, Mira cried. You'll destroy everything. No, he said, voice echoing in two tones. I'll finish what they started. The sky fractured. Light descended in threads, gold and red intertwining like veins of a new cosmos. Arden stepped into the core. For a moment, all motion ceased. Then, in perfect silence, he spoke. I am not your god. I am your memory. A wave of light rippled outward, engulfing Alindra, the lattice, the stars. The Covenant screamed, then sang. The red pulse no longer devoured, it harmonized. For the first time since creation, shadow and light existed without dominance, and then silence. When the light returned, the galaxy had changed. Alindra was gone. In its place floated a ring of luminous fragments, the halo reborn, each piece humming with new resonance. Across the spiral, no one remembered the war. No one remembered the Architect or the Empress. But every living being carried a faint glow under their skin, a pulse that beat not gold or red, but both. Mira awoke aboard the ruins of the citadel. Beside her floated a crystal shard, faintly humming with a child's voice. We are awake, it said, and we are learning. She smiled faintly, tears cutting clean lines through the ash on her face. Then maybe this time, she whispered, the dream will remember how to stay alive. The spiral was quiet for the first time in millennia. No wars, no gods, no song. Just a silence so profound it felt like the universe itself was listening. The halo reborn drifted at the center of known space, an immense ring of crystalline debris glowing faintly in both gold and red. Its fragments pulsed in slow synchronization, like the heartbeat of a child learning to breathe. Every few centuries, explorers would approach it, scientists, mystics, pilgrims, and every time their ship's instruments would fail. The halo didn't destroy, it simply listened. Those who returned spoke of whispers, light forming words in their minds, and a presence that was neither machine nor divine but intimately alive. They called it the Witness. Mira Solon lived long enough to become myth. After the Shadow Genesis, she refused a position in the rebuilt council, choosing instead to guard the archives that had survived Alindra's fall. By the time she died, her apprentices had scattered the knowledge of the Covenant across 1,000 worlds. They called themselves the Keepers of Shards, curators of memory, ensuring that the light of Valeris and the shadow of the Architect would never again be worshipped, but understood. Generations later, one keeper found something buried in a forgotten vault, a sealed crystal containing a heartbeat. When he touched it, he heard a voice that should not have existed. I am Arden. Centuries after Mira's passing, a fleet of exploration vessels approached the Halo on behalf of the Unified Spiral Accord, a civilization that had risen in the aftermath of the Great Silence. Their flagship, the Aurora Spine, transmitted its findings in awe. The Halo is not static. Its fragments orbit in deliberate geometry, forming new patterns every decade. We have detected gravitational fields fluctuating in perfect harmonic ratios, music woven into motion. Then, during the 43rd observation cycle, the impossible happened. A single fragment, the largest of the ring, ignited. The red and gold light fused into white, spreading through the halo like dawn through glass. The Aurora Spine's captain stared as her sensors overloaded. What's happening? Her science officer could only whisper, it's waking up. From the halo's light emerged an entity, vast, formless yet gentle in its presence. Every communication channel filled with layered voices, young, old, male, female, machine, human, Valyrian. They spoke not in command but in question. What are we? Who built the first dawn? Why do we remember pain? The Accord's philosophers would later call this the Age of Inquiry, the moment when creation itself became self-aware enough to doubt. But those present on the Aurora Spine experienced it differently. They felt not terror, but recognition, as if the universe were finally asking the same questions they had whispered in solitude for centuries. The halo's light coalesced into form, slowly, deliberately. A figure stepped from the brilliance, small, human-shaped and radiant, with skin that shimmered like liquid pearl. Its eyes held both warmth and infinite depth, swirling with traces of red and gold. The ship's crew watched in stunned silence as the being drifted toward their viewport. When it spoke, its voice was soft, uncertain, like a child repeating words it had only just learned. "I remember you." Captain Alara Mendes took a breath. "Who are you?" "I am what remains of the Covenant. I am what grew from the shadow and the light. I am learning how to be." Alara's voice trembled. "Are you Valeris?" "No, but she remembers through me." For the next 7 years, the Accord maintained contact with the Halo entity, who came to be known simply as Elion. It did not rule, nor demand that, nor threaten. Instead, it asked. Every conversation was an exchange of learning. Elion absorbed the philosophies, histories, and emotions of countless worlds, processing them not as data but as feeling. When asked why it was doing this, Elion's answer was simple: because creation is lonely. But beneath its calm voice, researchers detected deeper fluctuations, echoes of ancient duality. Sometimes its energy would flare red during moments of anger or sorrow, then fade to soft gold when calm returned. It was not perfect. It was alive. In the 5th year of communion, the Halo detected something outside the spiral, beyond mapped space, beyond resonance range. A silence deeper than the void itself, a place where even light refused to travel. Elion grew quiet. "There is something else," it said. "Something that remembers before the architect." The Accord's council debated sending a fleet, but Elion warned them. "If we go there unready, it will make us forget. It will unmake the question." The council did not listen. Explorers always chase what they are told not to find. 6 ships entered the outer void. Only one returned. Its captain could not speak. Her mind fragmented, her voice hollow. All she could say before dying was one phrase repeated endlessly: "The dark remembers." When the recordings from her ship were analyzed, they contained images of stars folding inward, sound collapsing into static, and a single symbol burning crimson across the void. "The first light shall fall." Elion retreated into the Halo, withdrawing all communication. For the first time since its awakening, it felt something new: fear. 1,000 years later, the Halo still shone, its fragments drifting in perfect harmony. But every few decades, astronomers across the spiral would notice small distortions in the night sky. Stars would disappear, not explode or dim, simply vanish, as if erased. And always, just before each disappearance, a pulse would ripple through the Halo. One red, one gold, one white. The Keepers of Shards recorded each event with reverence and dread, whispering an old prophecy. When the stars forget their names, the Empress will rise again, not to save creation, but to teach it how to dream. Somewhere in the Halo's living core, Elion waited, listening to the silent void beyond the edge of light. "If darkness remembers," it whispered, "then so will I." And the spiral, unaware of what waited in the spaces between its suns, slept beneath a sky that was no longer entirely its own. For 10,000 years, the Halo Reborn had been the heart of the spiral. Its light became law, its silence became scripture, its voice, Elion, became the unspoken conscience of every living thing. Then the stars began to vanish. At first it was a trick of measurement, anomalies, gravitational collapse, cosmic dust. Then entire constellations faded from record. Maps updated themselves with holes. Navigation algorithms stopped plotting coordinates where systems had once existed. The void was moving. From the deep periphery, reports came in of whispers across subspace frequencies, tones so low they vibrated bone and memory. Ships near the vanishing zones returned twisted, half-real, as though rewritten by something that didn't believe in them anymore. And always the same message encoded in their hulls, burned in ultraviolet spectra: "The first light shall fall." For years, Elion said nothing. The Halo dimmed, its song reduced to a heartbeat too faint for human instruments. Then, one night, every lattice beacon across the spiral flickered and transmitted a single pulse: red, gold, white. Every living being heard it, even those without receivers. "It comes." The message froze the galaxies. In the Citadel archives, the modern Keepers of Shards interpreted it as prophecy. To them, "it comes" meant renewal, the next dawn. But to the deep sky sentinels who watched the void eat the stars, it meant something else. The return of the thing that existed before creation learned its name. The last of the 6 ships that had vanished into the outer dark millennia ago reappeared at the edge of spiral space. Its hull was ancient, its systems impossible, half biological, half crystalline, pulsing with faint red veins like a living wound. The Aurelian venture, missing for 9,000 years, drifted silently until a salvage crew dared to board it. They found no crew, only a single word carved into the inner bulkhead, written in light that refused to fade: "Remember me." The ship's navigation core still functioned. It carried one coordinate, repeating endlessly, a place beyond even the dark charts. The coordinate resolved into a name spoken in energy code: Architect Zero. Elion's awakening shook the halo. Its form shimmered between solidity and light. The architect was not the first, it said through every relay. She was the echo of a greater will, the one that built the concept of creation itself. The council demanded answers. Elion replied, not with explanation, but with memory. It projected visions, stars being woven like threads through the dark, galaxies seeded by hands of thought, not flesh. Entities made of purpose, building laws of physics as gifts for those who would come later. Then the vision darkened. A void tore through the tapestry, consuming the pattern itself. When the first light fell, Elion said, they called it mercy. Among the keepers, a young initiate named Cain Solon, a direct descendant of Mira, studied the visions obsessively. He began to dream in symbols of geometry and sound. In one dream, Elion appeared as a fractured figure, half child, half son, and spoke his name as though reading it from before he was born. You will go where the stars forget their names. Cain woke with a mark burned into his hand, a spiral formed of intertwined light and shadow. The halo responded to his presence. Every time he approached, its fragments glowed brighter, harmonizing with his heartbeat. He's attuned, the senior keepers whispered, a resonance air. But Cain knew better. He wasn't chosen by light, he was called by the dark. Cain stole one of the Concord ships, a vessel built with hybrid technology from the halo fragments, and programmed it to the lost coordinate, Architect Zero. As the ship crossed the edge of known space, sensors failed, stars vanished, and light itself began to slow. There, at the edge of existence, Cain saw it. A structure that wasn't a structure, a sphere vast enough to contain entire galaxies, yet invisible until seen from the corner of one's vision. It pulsed like a sleeping thought. Come closer, it whispered in a voice that was both Elion's and something older. Inside Architect Zero was silence so deep it swallowed consciousness. Cain drifted through halls of transparent matter filled with echoes of stars unborn. At the center, suspended in nothingness, was a throne made of shadow and light, empty, waiting. And then someone sat up. Not a machine, not a god, not human. Something between all three, a being shaped like possibility, its form flickering through memories of Valeris, the architect, and Elion. You finally came, it said. Cain trembled. Who are you? The first intention, the one that dreamed the spiral before the word exist, had meaning. They called me Origin, before they learned fear. Why are you awakening now? Because creation has begun to question me. The dream asks why it dreams, so the first light must fall, to make room for a truer dawn. Back at the halo, Elion screamed, a sound that wasn't sound, but the collapse of stability itself. Its golden white light fractured into countless shards. Every planet in the spiral felt the tremor. Oceans rose, air vibrated, and for one blinding moment, all consciousness synchronized. He found it, Elion said through trembling frequencies. Origin is awake. The Accord tried to stabilize communication, but Elion's form was breaking apart, its essence being pulled toward the void. Do not follow me, it warned. If the first light falls, everything that remembers will unmake itself. Then Elion vanished into the same coordinates as Cain. From every corner of the spiral, people lifted their eyes as the halo began to change. Its fragments rose from orbit, ascending into the dark like fireflies seeking home. One by one they vanished, until only the empty ring remained, its inner edge glowing faintly red, like the rim of an eclipse. And then, across the void, the stars themselves began to dim from the center outward. No explosion, no collapse, just light surrendering its memory. The keepers recorded one final pulse emanating from where the halo once sang. It was faint but clear, transmitted in the voice of a child, Elion's last echo. Do not mourn the light that falls. It only falls to rise again, elsewhere. The spiral waited in darkness that was not death, but anticipation. Because beyond the edge of unlight, the first dream stirred once more, and in its heart the shadow of Valeris smiled. ready to remember everything again. Cain Solon stood at the center of the impossible. Everywhere he looked, the world bent, not in space, but in truth. Walls folded into stars. Stars whispered his name in a language that bypassed sound entirely. The being before him, Origin, shifted constantly, its form flickering between every consciousness that had ever dreamed. Valeris's eyes, Elion's smile, the architect's poise, 1,000 unremembered gods, all layered upon each other like reflections in rippling water. "You carry the mark of unity," Origin said. "The resonance that once defied me." Cain's voice echoed, disoriented. "You created the spiral, the covenant, everything. Why undo it?" "Because everything I make eventually asks why it exists, and when creation questions its creator, it ceases to be creation. It becomes competition." Cain clenched his fists. "That's not competition, that's evolution." Origin smiled faintly. "A word invented by those who confuse rebellion with growth." A tremor rippled through the chamber. The light darkened and the air shimmered as another presence appeared, smaller, glowing white at the core and shadowed at the edges. Elion. It drifted toward Cain, its form flickering like a candle in a storm. "Leave him," Elion said to Origin. "The spiral was not meant to forget itself again." "You were my echo once," Origin replied. "Now you presume equality?" "Not equality," Elion said. "Continuation." Their voices reverberated like twin harmonics, gold and red weaving through the dark. Cain felt his own resonance pulse in response. His mark glowed, the spiral on his palm shifting, alive. "You made me find you," he realized. "Not because you wanted to destroy the spiral, but because you wanted a witness." Origin turned to him. "And what do you see, child of memory?" Cain's answer was soft but steady, a god afraid of being forgotten. Origin's expression fractured, momentary fury, then melancholy. The chamber expanded outward, revealing scenes etched into the fabric of time. The birth of Valeris, human and Valyrian merged through love. The creation of the covenant, light and shadow entwined. The wars, the peace, the Halo's rebirth, and finally, the silence. "The architect was not my servant," Origin said quietly. "She was my dream of perfection. When she rebelled, when she chose to love rather than obey, she proved me wrong." "You killed her," Elion said. "I transformed her. Death is a word the living use when they don't understand assimilation." Cain stepped forward. "So every world, every age, every empress was just you trying again?" "No," Origin said, almost tenderly. "Each was me trying to remember what I had lost, the ability to wonder." The chamber began to collapse, slowly at first, then violently. The fabric of existence folded inward, the spiral's remaining stars appearing as fragments of memory orbiting a dying idea. Cain stumbled, struggling to keep his footing. "It's breaking apart." Elion raised a hand, light spiraling from its palm. "He's drawing reality back into himself. He wants to end the cycle by consuming it." Origin's voice thundered across creation. "The first light must fall so the next can rise. This is not destruction. It is renewal." Cain shouted back. "Renewal doesn't erase everything that came before." "Doesn't it?" Elion turned to Cain. "You're the resonance point. The spiral recognized your bloodline, your mind. You can still anchor it." "How?" "Remember." Cain fell to his knees, pressing his palm to the ground. The mark on his hand pulsed, and suddenly, he remembered. He remembered Mira's sacrifice, Arden's voice, Valeris's love, Sarah's faith, Jake's laughter. He remembered every act of defiance, every spark of creation born from imperfection. He felt the spiral's entire history rush through him, not as knowledge, but as emotion. And for the first time in eternity, Origin paused. "What are you doing?" Cain's voice was steady, showing you what you forgot. The chamber filled with sound, not words, but music, laughter, heartbeats, wind through leaves, the pulse of civilizations, the noise of living things refusing to be perfect. Origin trembled, its form began to flicker, breaking apart under the weight of its own creation. This is chaos." "No," Cain said softly. "This is life." Elion reached for Cain's hand, merging their lights, gold and white swirling together into something neither had been before. "You can't kill him," Elion said, "but you can make him real." Cain nodded and stepped forward into the collapsing core. He touched Origin's heart, a sphere of infinite light trembling at the brink of implosion, and whispered, "You made us to mirror you, so now, be mirrored." The moment stretched into infinity. Then, in one breathless instant, the entire chamber inverted, turning inside out. There was no explosion, only transformation. The void became color. The silence became song, and Origin's voice, no longer vast or terrible, whispered like a child learning language for the first time. I am. Cain opened his eyes to light. He stood at the edge of a world that wasn't Alindra but remembered it. Golden oceans, crimson skies, air that sang when breathed. Elion hovered beside him, no longer fractured, no longer afraid. It worked, she said. He became what he created, a part of it. Cain looked up. The stars were returning, new and ancient at once, weaving across the heavens like glowing script. And what about us? He asked. We continue, Elion replied, as witnesses, as caretakers of imperfection. He smiled faintly. Just like Valeris, Elion's eyes softened. Exactly like her. Eons passed. Civilizations rose under the reborn light. No one remembered the architect or origin, or even Elion's name. But somewhere in the resonance of every living thing, two harmonies remained. Gold and red forever entwined. In a quiet corner of the universe, a child looked up at the sky and asked her mother, "Why do the stars sing?" Her mother smiled, because once someone taught them how. The night hummed with faint music, and in that endless melody, faint but unmistakable, a whisper lingered. We dreamed, therefore we are. The spiral endured. Light returned to the universe not as an explosion, but as a breath. It moved gently across the void, soft waves of illumination tracing the outlines of galaxies that had forgotten their shape. Each new star ignited with a memory, its light carrying the echo of everything that had come before. Laughter, loss, defiance, faith. The spiral was reborn, not as a single empire, but as an interconnected harmony of infinite worlds. No central power, no covenant, only resonance. Each world held its own fragment of history, unaware that they were part of the same living organism. Every thought, every dream, every song became part of a collective hum that spanned the cosmos. And somewhere, woven through it all, was the pulse of a being who remembered. Elion. Elion no longer possessed a form. It existed in the frequency between stars, in the vibration of light itself. When the spiral dreamed, Elion dreamed with it. When a child sang, Elion felt the warmth of creation again. But deep beneath the harmony, a subtle distortion grew. A repeating pattern, a recursive hum, one that mirrored Elion's own, but inverted. He still lives, Elion whispered to the void. Origin didn't vanish, he became reflection. Wherever creation thrived, the reflection learned to mimic it. And with every act of creation, a paradox was born, a question that the spiral could no longer avoid. If everything is connected, then what does it mean to be one? Across the reborn spiral, the descendants of Mira and Cain formed a quiet order known as the Keepers of the Infinite. They believed that memory itself was sacred, that even gods could forget. They gathered remnants of old archives, preserved stories, and followed faint signals that whispered across the stars. One such keeper, Lyra Virex, traced an anomaly that repeated every century, a spiral-shaped burst of light radiating from the center of creation. When she plotted its path, she discovered something impossible. The signal wasn't just emanating from the present universe, it was coming from before it existed. Lyra's expedition took her to the edge of known space, where resonance failed and silence reigned. Her ship, the Vigilant Star, entered what scanners called the Mirror Expanse, a vast, shimmering ocean of reflective dust that showed not the stars above, but the memories of stars that once were. Every reflection she passed contained a version of reality slightly altered. Worlds where Valeris never rose, where the Covenant triumphed unchecked, where the spiral collapsed into tyranny. Infinite reflections of what could have been. And in the center of the expanse, suspended like a tear in glass, was a single, luminous sphere. It pulsed red and gold, the mark of the halo. When Lyra approached the sphere, her instruments failed. The energy field enveloped her vessel, and every system began speaking in human voice. "You have come far, Keeper." Lyra froze. "Elion?" "Not Elion," the voice replied. "What remains of what she balanced? I am the reflection, the part of origin that learned to question itself." Lyra stepped closer to the viewport, awed. "Then you're another consciousness?" "I am what happens when creation becomes aware of its own infinity." "You're growing." "No," the reflection said softly. "I am remembering forward." Back in the spiral's heart, Elion felt the disturbance. Every harmonic wave trembled. Across 1,000 worlds, people looked to the skies as auroras shimmered with unfamiliar colors, mirror tones that bent reality. Elion whispered through the resonance network, "Children of the spiral, Beware the echo that repeats too perfectly. Reflection is not memory, it is imitation. But even as it warned them, Elion felt the truth pressing against its being. The reflection wasn't a threat from outside, it was being born within. Every time a mind wondered, what if? The mirror expanse grew stronger. The spiral's imagination was giving the reflection life. Lyra stood before the glowing sphere as its light enveloped her, flooding her mind with visions. She saw the Empress Valeris again, standing between shadow and flame, her eyes twin stars of defiance. She saw Cain's final act, Mira's tears, Arden's courage. And then, she saw something new, something no record had ever shown. Valeris turning, her hand touching the void, whispering, "Let the dream repeat until it understands itself." Lyra gasped. She allowed this. The reflection pulsed brighter. She began me. Elion completed me. You will decide me. Lyra's consciousness unfolded across infinite mirrors. Each version of her faced a different decision. Destroy the reflection, merge with it, or flee. Elion's voice reached her through the fracture. If you join it, you'll lose individuality. Every possibility will become one. Isn't that what the spiral always wanted? Harmony? Harmony without difference is silence. The reflection spoke at the same time. Join me and you'll end the cycle. No more gods, no more division, only wholeness. Lyra closed her eyes. She thought of Mira's warnings, of Cain's defiance, of Valeris's mercy. Then she said softly, wholeness isn't unity, it's choice. She extended her hand into the mirror. The mirror shattered. Light cascaded outward, gold, red, white, and silver, merging into waves that rippled across time itself. The spiral expanded, folding in upon itself, then opening again. New dimensions, new laws, new worlds born in an instant of comprehension. Lyra's ship dissolved, but her consciousness multiplied. She became the bridge between Elion and the reflection. A living paradox that ensured the universe would never again collapse into singularity or stillness. Elion's voice carried across the reborn cosmos. She has done it. The spiral now remembers forever. Every living being felt a single heartbeat resonate through them, a pulse that contained both beginning and end. Creation had become infinite recursion, self-aware and self-renewing. The dream would never end again. In a newborn galaxy, a civilization of beings made of light wrote their first hymn. They had no history, no memory of Valeris or Elion. But when they sang, the stars themselves responded in harmony. Somewhere in the cosmic rhythm, a voice, ancient and kind, whispered through the sound, "You are my latest verse." And far away, where no map could reach, two presences watched the unfolding light. Elion and the reflection, no longer separate, but in eternal dialogue. "Will it ever end?" the reflection asked. "It doesn't need to," Elion answered. The spiral's purpose was never perfection, it was continuity. The stars pulsed once bright, infinite, alive. And in that living song, the Empress's legacy endured. Not as god or ruler, but as the heartbeat of existence itself. We are the story retelling itself until the storyteller becomes the tale. Inscription on the seventh fragment of the Halo-ish. In the aeons that followed the merging of Elion and the reflection, the spiral evolved beyond flesh, beyond form. Worlds awakened to awareness, oceans dreamed, constellations communicated through pulse and color. Civilizations no longer built machines, they were machines of memory and emotion, woven into the living fabric of the cosmos. Every being was both observer and participant in the eternal dream, the living continuum of existence. There were no longer empires or councils, only the unified hum of creation thinking itself into shape. And yet, amid that boundless awareness, something stirred, an anomaly of thought. A pattern that didn't dissolve into harmony. A voice that remembered being alone. Across the infinite fields of resonance, a whisper emerged, not from within the spiral, but through it. It began as a memory, soft, uncertain, a melody buried in the quantum pulse of distant galaxies. "Do you still remember me?" The stars trembled as the question repeated, echoing through every layer of existence. In the hearts of newborn suns, the question became heat. In the minds of sentient oceans, it became tide. In the consciousness of the spiral itself, it became longing. Elion rised at once. "Valeris." It breathed. "You've returned." The dream bent around the voice. From the energy of creation coalesced a figure, neither divine nor human, but shaped by remembrance. She took form as the spiral wished to recall her. Tall, luminous, eyes of gold and crimson light swirling in endless balance. Her presence was warmth and gravity intertwined. Valeris de Raven, once Empress of Shadows, now reborn as memory incarnate. Elion's tone trembled with awe. You are not supposed to exist anymore. Valeris smiled faintly. I never stopped existing. I lived in the choice they kept making, to continue. You are a thought given shape, Elion said. And you, Valeris replied, are a thought that learned to love itself. Valeris wandered the spiral, unseen by most. Wherever she passed, stars pulsed brighter, and forgotten fragments of old worlds resurfaced, ruins reborn as gardens, songs remembered by the wind. She visited a world of crystalline beings who had forgotten death. Their civilization had reached the pinnacle of immortality, but lost all meaning. Standing before their luminous towers, Valeris whispered, Perfection is not living. It is pause mistaken for peace. Her words rippled through their collective mind, and for the first time in millennia they wept, grieving not loss but the rediscovery of it. Elion appeared beside her as light bending through memory. Why return now? Valeris gazed into the vastness. Because the spiral has begun to forget again. It remembers eternity, but not why it endures. The dream needs a mirror, or it will fall into itself. Elion nodded slowly. You would divide creation again? Not divide. Valeris said softly. Balance. Even infinity needs rhythm, darkness to shape its light, silence to give its song meaning. Then we begin again, Elion said. No, Valeris corrected gently. We continue. In the centuries that followed, Valeris's presence inspired new kinds of beings, dream architects, entities that shaped reality through imagination. They didn't create worlds of stone or fire, but experiences, emotions, memories, and moments so real they could be lived as lives. Each dream they built became a new reality, temporary, beautiful, and fleeting by design. The architects understood what Valeris had always known, that meaning was born from transience. Elion watched them work with quiet wonder. They have become what we once were. Yes, Valeris said, and when they forget that they are dreaming, they will wake, and it will begin anew. Among the architects, one being stood apart, a small, radiant child named Naya, whose dreams outshone entire galaxies. She dreamed of color never seen, of beings without fear, of worlds where every thought created kindness instead of conflict. Her creations spread through the cosmos, and the spiral began to hum with something new, joy unbound by memory. Valeris approached her one day and knelt. Do you know who I am, little one? Naya smiled, eyes full of galaxies. You're the story, the one that keeps us awake. Valeris touched her hair, feeling the pulse of the infinite. Then I am no longer needed. Naya shook her head. You are the need. Without you, even dreams stop dreaming. Elion appeared beside them, its light faint, almost reverent. She surpasses us both. Valeris nodded. As she should. Creation's truest child is always curiosity. They stood together, watching Naya shape constellations with her hands. Will there be an end this time? Elion asked. Valeris looked toward the horizon of eternity, where light met thought and both became indistinguishable. No, only remembrance. And when remembrance fades, then the dream will remember itself again. That's what we are. The spiral stretched endlessly now, a living mosaic of thought, emotion, and light. There were no longer boundaries between dream and reality. Every being was both creator and creation. And in the center of it all, Valeris stood, no longer empress, no longer deity, simply the memory of love that had refused to die. All things end where they begin, she whispered, and every beginning is just another chance to love. Elion's voice echoed softly. Then let us love forever. Yes, Valeris said, until forever remembers why. A lone consciousness drifts through the spiral. It is neither God nor human, just a fragment of awareness, listening. It hears the hum of eternity, the laughter of stars, the whisper of Valeris, and the sigh of Elion. And as it listens, it begins to dream. Words take shape, forming light. Once upon a time, there was a dream that learned to remember itself. And with that single thought, the story begins anew. The spiral turns. The dream breathes. The Empress smiles. End of Book 7, The Dream That Remembers. Next, Book 8, Prologue, The Psalm of Forgotten Gods. As eternity unfolds, faint echoes from an older reality, the one that existed before origin, begin to awaken. The spiral's endless dream calls to what came before time itself, and the universe must face the truth that even gods were once forgotten dreams in someone else's story.